The most common way that business owners screw up employee classification is to misclassify people who should be hourly and give them a salary. Salaries are easier. Let's face it, right? You don't have to track time. You don't have to give meal and rest breaks. There's a whole lot of things you don't have to do. I get it, but it can be such a costly mistake. In my opinion, it's one of the most costly mistakes that an employer could make. You can have a whole company that's paid hourly, but you usually can't have a whole company that's paid salary. People use salary and exempt and non-exempt and hourly interchangeably. I even do it myself sometimes so that people understand the concepts that I'm teaching or consulting on, because people equate salary with exempt and hourly with non-exempt. And to an extent, they can be interchangeable. But if you think about somebody who works for the DMV, for instance, when that 5 o'clock bell rings, they're out. They don't work 1 minute past 5 o'clock, right? So they can be hourly and exempt because there's a predictable number of hours that they're working each day and each week. That said, even when they're on a salary, because there's a predictable number of hours and days that they work each week, they still need to be treated like an exempt employee, given their rest breaks and meal periods, paid overtime if any overtime is actually worked. So sometimes we've got clients that will pay people a salary and then true up any overtime, any missed meal periods or rest breaks on the next regularly scheduled payroll. Not a great practice, but some people do it that way. Sometimes the reason that people interchangeably use exempt and salary and non-exempt and hourly is because they don't really know what exempt or non-exempt really means. Kind of weird words, right? Non-exempt means not exempt from overtime. So they're overtime eligible, right? They're paid by the hour, typically. They need to get meal and rest breaks. They need to incur overtime. If overtime, depending on what state you're working in, overtime laws differ, but they're eligible for all of that. The main difference is that non-exempt employees, so people that typically work hourly, are doing more routinized jobs, right? They're using repeatable processes. There's less discretion and independent decision-making. They're following recipes, processes, procedures, protocols. They're checking in with the boss about things, right? Exempt employees, i.e. people think of as salaried, on the other hand, have a lot more. The majority of the job, 51% or greater, needs to be using independent thinking, independent judgment, decision-making, right? They're the planners. They're the ones that are delegating to the non-exempt people. They might carry a management title. They might carry a director or VP title. The title, however, though, don't be fooled, isn't the big indicator, right? If you think about somebody who works at a restaurant who manages a kitchen, if that kitchen manager is flipping burgers or steaks for 75% of the time, even if they've got 10 direct reports, they're creating the schedule, they're managing the people, they're training, they're hiring, they're firing, 75% of the job is following a recipe or a process. They have to be classified as non-exempt and paid an hourly rate and given overtime, meal periods, and rest breaks. Misclassification is interesting because I would say that it's easily on my top 3 list of most expensive mistakes, potentially, that an employer could make. And it's one of the ones that they kind of play a little fast and loose with. They don't understand it. It's easier to give someone a salary. They think that it's up to them to give a salary, and it's actually not. There's a chunk of law called the Fair Labor Standards Act, and that dictates who gets to have a salary and who must be classified as hourly. The costs of misclassification can be really high. That's why I always say it's much easier and safer to just have people be hourly and classified as non-exempt than it is to make the mistake of misclassifying. Here's why. Because people need to be given overtime pay. They need to be given their meal periods and rest breaks, like I said. And the problem is, if you're giving someone a salary that isn't meant to be salaried, you're not tracking the time. You're not tracking the overtime. You're not tracking the meal periods and the rest breaks. So if that person, this is how it happens. They get fired. They're angry. They talk to a plaintiff's attorney, and the plaintiff's attorney says, wait, so you were a marketing assistant and they were giving you a salary? Were you also getting overtime? Were you getting meal periods and rest breaks? No? Well, we're going to go back and ask for all of them, going back 3 years. Every single day you worked, you didn't get a meal period or a rest break. Every single day you worked was a 10-hour day, right? They could be absolutely making that up, but guess what? you're going to have a hard time proving that it didn't happen because you're not tracking time. A well-trained and well-skilled HR person can help you figure out, by breaking the job down into sort of bite-sized pieces, whether the person is really meant to be exempt or whether they should be properly classified as non-exempt. We have some tools where we can evaluate the percentage of the job that's spent doing certain tasks. Like if you take me, for instance, I own a business, but I still have to track my time. I still have to pay bills and just do sort of routinized administrative type, my calendaring, whatever. But the majority of my job is at a unique, discrete decision-making level, right? So everybody's got some parts of their job that are more routinized, procedure-driven, protocol-driven, menu-driven, or recipe-driven. But what percentage is that? We'll help you break that down. And sometimes there's some small tweaks you can make to certain jobs where we can bump them into being truly an exempt position, right? We just offload a few of the more administrative responsibilities, get their unique, discrete responsibilities above 51%, and guess what? They're properly classified. In other cases, it's almost impossible to get them properly classified, and then we can help you, probably along with an employment attorney, help you get them properly classified and get that all cleaned up. Misclassifying exempt and non-exempt employees is one of the most expensive mistakes that employers can make. This isn't one that you want to play fast and loose with. Let us help you properly classify your employees, clean up any improperly classified employee classification issues, right? So that you can go forward cleanly. We can help you work out the new policies around meal periods and rest breaks, around overtime. Make sure that it can go right going forward for you because it can be pricey.